Okay, hello, welcome back. This is going to be the 50 NL session review part 6. And I only have 11 hands. This is actually the last session from yesterday. I did 3 2.5-hour sessions. Each one is about 1,000 hands, so that's 3,000 hands a day. Most days that I'll be able to get in. And it was like an hour and 20 minutes to do 2,000 hands of review, so probably these videos are going to be about 2 hours each, maybe 1 hour and 30 minutes if I limit to like 30 or 35 big blinds and greater. I've been doing 25 big blinds and greater. So I'm 3-betting King 9 suited. This is actually, I actually don't like that I did this. If you look at the 3-bet, the fold to 3-bet, which is right here, 3F, is 20% over 475 hands. And his cutoff open looks like it's 18%. So I'm expecting him to pretty much call his entire range here. And King 9 suited is not really beating that range. So this is a little tick. King 9 suited, 3-bet versus 20% 3-bet fold is probably not a good strategy. And let's just see what happens here. Yeah, so I'm gonna c-bet this. There's really not much I can do on the turn or river here. And then, yeah. I mean, I think at the time I was thinking that we're pretty deep, so we can probably play a little bit deeper. Like, we start off with like 120 big blinds each. But if I'm going to be doing that out of position, I'd like a hand better, like King Queen suited, Ace Queen, or Ace Queen suited, Ace Queen offsuit. You know, like even pocket 8s or pocket 9s. If I flop a set, then I can check raise really big and make a really big pot. But King 9 suited it's super awkward. I probably could have just flatted in out of position. I could have just completed the small blind, and that way the pot would be like 350 or something like 350. And if I flop like a nut flush or something like that, or like King 9 comes out, then I can check raise really big anyway, and still make a big pot. But I don't really like my 3-bet here. I'm 3-betting 9 ace offsuit in position versus a 26-18 with a 3-bet fold of 56. And I think that this is definitely a much better spot. I like 3-betting ace X's because, like, if an ace hits, I can check behind and pot control. And then if they want to lead out, like sometimes you can suck out with 2 pair. It'll be like an ace 7-4 flop, and then the turn will be a 9, and then you can do some stuff with that. But usually I'll 3-bet the ace X, and if I flop an ace with a weak ace, like ace 9, I'll just check behind, pot control, and then turn it into a bluff catcher. And then if it goes check on the turn, then I can bet half pot and then be half pot again and get value from like pocket 9s or a weaker ace by that time. This player here cold calls my 3-bet, and I flop overs with a gut shot. And at this point, I believe that he could have a lot of pocket pairs, like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, pocket 4s, pocket 10s, and I don't really see them going anywhere. I don't think that they're a super fishy player, 26-6, so it really makes me think that their range is going to be like middling pocket pairs. They probably could have flopped a set already. So I'm just going to check behind. If they check again, then I can use this king on the turn as a bluff card. Because if, yeah, obviously if I 3-bet and then I check and it looks like ace king or king queen a lot of the time. So I'm gonna bet that. And now, whenever the second king comes out and the spade hits, I don't believe he's ever gonna give me credit for a king when another king comes out. And it's right on the money with the range I put him on is pocket fours through pocket tens. Maybe even pocket jacks a lot of the time because he's pretty passive. Maybe even pocket queens, to be honest. So if that second king didn't come out, I probably would have bombed the river and gotten a fold a lot of the time from pocket eights, pocket fours, things like that. I'm being 3-bet by a pretty weak player. This player is not a very strong player at all. So I'm actually very happy calling the 3-bet with a suited ace in position when we're deeper. You know, maybe this player comes along. Suited aces are really good in position in multi-way pots if you get lucky and hit a flush, or trip sixes or like a boat, something like that. So the 3-bet is 6%. It's not the highest, so I'm gonna constrict his range, or I guess restrict his range to a tighter range, which is gonna include a lot of king and jack X's, and pocket tens, pocket nines, ace queen, and ace 10 are not gonna really want to call a really big flop raise, and because we're so deep, I mean, he could actually call a really big flop raise with like ace 10 or ace queen, but whenever the second king comes out, I think that I can actually represent a jack X or king X at this point and get a fold from pocket nines and pocket tens. And this player does fold whenever he checks the king. I expect to be check raised a lot of the time with the king X, or maybe like a boat, like if he has pocket jacks. But also, it could just mean that he doesn't have anything very good, or he has an underpair to the board. And like tens and nines, ace 10 and ace queen probably just would give up at this point. But I still have a lot of equity. I still have an ace and also a diamond can come out, and also a jack can come out. That would basically counterfeit his tens and nines. Pocket ace maybe if he feels like it. So I have pocket queens here. I'm 3-betting mid slick again, a weak reg, and he 4-bets me. And now I have pocket queens. It's a really strong hand, four-handed, and he has a 4-bet of 12%, which is actually it's a little bit higher on the scale, I'd say. I have 10%. This player has 15% over 1.8k hands. But he also plays a really super tight range of 13, 9, 2.2. So his 4-bet is naturally going to be higher. But this player is 26-18 with a 12% 4-bet. It's higher than my 4-bet, and I 4-bet bluff sometimes, and I also, I guess, spaz 4-bet like pocket nines sometimes too. So I'm going to give him a pretty, not a really loose range, but enough to where I can jam queens profitably. But he ends up folding, so maybe like he was 4-bet bluffing me with like king jack or ace 5 suited or something like that. So I'm 3-bet bluffing 8-10 suited here. But again, I'm gonna give myself another tick. I really should stop trying to find spots to 3-bet bluff, because I'm just not looking at the stats a lot of the time. This guy has a 3-bet fold of 14%, which is extremely, extremely fishy. And so I should only be 3-betting for value here. whenever he min raises me, I know that this player is really, really weak and super, super bluffy. And I actually probably some of the time should have just check shove the turn here, because I can see him doing this with a lot of spades and a lot of complete air balls. And I know it sounds a little bit extreme to check raise 10-8 suited here, but I actually would have liked to have seen myself check the flop so that I don't get check raised. And I could just keep the pot small and then induce a bluff, because he's very bluffy. So again, because I wasn't really aware of the player that I was playing against at the time, I don't believe, or else I would have played this hand a lot differently. I probably glanced at the stats pretty quickly, saw that 18 open, I'm like, okay, I should probably just 3-bet the button. But again, that's a really bad idea. Also, his 4-bet's pretty high, and I could have been 4-bet, and then that just ruins my plan altogether. But whenever I flop this, I think I should have turned it into a bluff catcher, and whenever he does raise me, I probably could have gotten sticky, in all honesty, because this player, again, very, very bluffy, very spewy, and a second pair to the board. This bet sizing is ridiculous. Yeah, I probably should have just checked jammed, play some high variance poker. But I chickened out, and again, I just wasn't aware of who I was playing against. I didn't look at the name, most likely. Okay, so a queen jack flop hits, and I want to check behind because players in full ring don't 4-bet queens and jacks a lot of the time, and I don't expect to get a lot of value from 10s or 9s. So whenever he leads out on the turn, I'm very happy to call. And whenever he bets 250 on the river, it looks like a fishy blocker bet, so I'm just going to go for a small value raise for maybe like jack ace or queen ace or queen king. And he calls me. And I'm pretty sure I remember him having ace queen, so I like my value raise on the river. I like checking the flop, and I'm blocking a lot of like jack kings and queen kings and things like that. So if he bets 250 and then I do a value raise and then he jams, I probably just fold because he might have like hit pocket 9s or pocket 7s at that point. So I'm flatting pocket 7s, and I flop a set here. And now this player is pretty loose aggressive. I'm already thinking that his sizing here means that he doesn't have an 8x, because if he had an 8x, he would have bet bigger. 0 human 0. He's pretty laggy. His bet sizing are usually pretty big. He never half pots it, so I'm not really sure what's going on. Whenever the 5 comes out, I want to bet again for value, but I probably should have bet bigger. I really would have liked to have seen myself go to like $12 or $13, maybe like $12.50. So I'm going to make a note about this as well. It's too small versus a lag. Because lags are notorious for being complete fish and calling down everything, because they want to like peel in position and float with trash and then try to make a play on the river. So I like to make them pay for that. Whenever he jams over the top, I mean, I'm not going to give him credit for 8x. It's possible he has an 8x, but like I said, my read on the flop was that if he did have an 8x, he would have c-bet the flop bigger, because he has a lot of value, a lot of draw equity, and he should have just bet the flop bigger. And I would never give him an 8x here. So whenever he does this on the turn to a small bet, it's gonna make me think that he's shoving a flush draw a lot of the time, or perhaps shoving like an overpair if he's feeling very spewy at the time. So whenever he does that, it's like a no-brainer call for me. The board pairs, and he does show ace 8 offsuit. So again, my read was, I think my read was correct, but at the same time, it's just a little bit weird the way that he did it, and I'm sure he wasn't leveling me or anything like that by doing a half pot c-bet to negate 8x from my mind. I'm pretty sure he didn't do that on purpose, because I've played 2,000 hands against this player, and I'm pretty aware of their tendencies on bet sizings and things like that. So, I mean, I sucked out. Good job for me, but I'm not gonna overthink that spot too much. We have a 42-13 open. It's pretty tight, and they're pretty fishy, so I don't expect a squeeze to work most of the time, but I do want to call Jack Queen suited. Probably a weaker player over here, 29-21. It's a small sample, but still. And Jack Queen suited, I think, plays pretty nicely multi-way. At this point, I'm just gonna bet out, and probably should have just checked the turn here. Yeah, again, I'm just finding all these spots. This was the last session of the day. This was my third session of the 2.5-hour sessions. And I mean, there are still a ton of combos that are gonna call that I'm ahead of, but at the same time, I think that I probably should just check this. Check call, because I have a straight draw and it allows him to bluff as well. I really don't like being raised here, but at the same time, it's actually a really good price to call. And if the club doesn't come out and I check, he might check, and I might still have the best hand if he's doing this with like a 10 jack of clubs or something like that. So I make the call. I think it's a pretty standard call, and I don't really see him doing this with clubs most of the time. I think a value hand is probably more likely. So whenever I hit my straight and it's a club, I feel comfortable just shoving this and getting called by a 2-pair set. I'm not going to give him a straight at this point, because that would mean that he has Jack, King. He hit like a gutter on the flop, I guess. Jack, King of clubs is like the only hand that I'm going to be afraid of at this point. That would have played it the way that he did, where he turns the straight and then, well, that, or not 8 Jack clubs, because the 8 of clubs is already on the board. So there's one combo that I'm afraid of, and then also some other combos that maybe he irrationally raises the turn on this kind of a run out to a double barrel. And he has a set of 2s, so I made the right play by shoving. He snap called me with bottom set there. He has like the 20th nuts at that point, so I don't see how he could ever make that call. I probably wouldn't have called a bottom set there. Not for 50 big blinds. This is a hand where I wasn't really paying attention, and I was probably looking at the forums or something like that, which is also showing a lead where I'm not really engaged. Again, it's the last session of the day, so I probably should have been more engaged. But I mean, flatting ace-king off on the button is not really terrible some of the time, because you can trap people. So here it is. I hit my 2-pair, which is pretty amazing, and I have like 50 big blinds or 100 big blinds, so I bet pretty big to get value from. Well, I don't want to bet too big, because actually he might have a king queen at this point. And now, whenever the 9 comes out, it completes a lot of 2 pairs like ace 9 and king 9. And he's not going to give me credit for ace king. He might give me credit for ace 3 or ace 4. So I bet the river pretty big. I'm hoping he has ace 9 or king 9, or wants to look me up with the king. The pot's already going to be like 45 if he calls, but he actually check jams the river. And I don't see how I can ever fold this versus a fishy player like this. So I make the call, and he turns basically the nuts, and gets all super passive and like check calls and then check jams. When he should have just kept betting. I'm not really sure what he was doing there. But I mean, okay, I got set up here. There's no way I can fold that at the river unless he hits like a set of nines. So here I am 3-betting pocket aces. I could have bet 3-bet bigger because this player's fold to 3-bet is super, super low. Which means that I should have 3-bet bigger to at least $5, maybe $6. This player would get a little bit sticky with their entire range, basically. And I checked the flop because, again, I don't think his range is going to be very strong here. I would have expected to have been 4-bet by 10s, jacks, queens, kings, because his 4-bet's 14%. I don't want to run into a set, but I do want to give him a chance to bluff. So whenever the other 2 comes out, I mean the backdoor flush, I'm never going to give him credit for that. I want to get value from Queen X. I don't think he has a set at this point either. So I bet pretty small. For one, it allows him to check jam if he wants to, because I know that this player's bluffy. This is the time where I knew that I was in the hand with this player, as opposed to last time where I wasn't really paying attention. He does check jam. He just check jams all in on the river. That's a really big bet. But I have pocket aces with an ace of club blocker. And if he wants to check shove a weaker flush, he'd have to have something like king jack, king 10, jack 10, 9 10. I mean, there are a few combos he could still have, but at the same time, he's super, super fishy, and he's doing this with pocket 5s. So I mean, good job to me. So yeah, king 9 suited 3-bet versus a 20% fold to 3-bet. The same thing for the 8-10 suited is I'm 3-betting too light versus players that are showing that they're calling station in 3-bet pots. My 7-7 turn bet size against the 4 to a straight was way too small, because the only thing that he's going to be calling me with is a flush draw, and he's not folding a flush draw for a bigger bet. Or maybe like a lower set at that point, or overpair. Whenever I 3-bet the 8-10 suited, I probably should have just checked the flop to induce a bluff. And the jack queen suited turn barrel, I probably should have just checked behind, or check called, turning it into a bluff catcher at that time. And then my 3-bet sizing with ace-ace was just a little bit too small versus somebody that never folds 3-bets. So yeah, I like doing these reviews, and I mean, from the 3,000 hand session, I have an entire flashcard. You can't really read the details, but this is an entire flashcard just the front, that I found hands where I believe I misplayed it in at least one way or another. And I'm looking to really, really just perfect everything, make everything just perfect, all my bet sizing perfect, my lines to be perfect, to get better at knowing when to check call and when to like check raise and things like that. But anyway, I'm probably going to take a nap now and play my 3 sessions a little bit later tonight. And peace out. Hope you enjoy my videos and you're learning something.